If you're trying to build a portfolio and you're chasing rate as your number one priority, just go directly to the bank.
I think the perception with rooming houses has come from share houses. So people do think that you're getting a lot of people in there that are, mooching off Centrelink.
Underinsurance is the biggest issue that we see. Building costs, labour costs, replacement rates gone through the roof.
You'll spin your wheels, you'll try and get the cheap money rather than getting the money that's actually going to get you, or getting the funding stack that's actually going to get you the deal. If you actually already have a property inside of a self-managed super fund and you have a loan on that property.
When you are doing the same deal type and you're dealing with the same client type over and over again, your ability to get the options and the strategies to the client in a refined, fast manner.
No longer is a property manager just a rent collector for you.
For heaven's sake, if it's with one of the major banks, please get in touch with me. I actually helped a client that was on 10.74% get their loans down to about the 7.1% mark. That's almost a 4% saving. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Finance This Property That. We've got him back, finally. It's been a long time between drinks, but welcome Mark Kierpal from Urbicus Urban Planners. He's been on before, but it's been, like I said, a long time between drinks. And I wanted to get on here and talk about some really hot topics around a few things I'm seeing in my business around developments, and particularly around the top three. I think we're going to cover off today, the top three mistakes people are making when they're trying to do a development or purchasing sites, etc. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Dion.
I probably stuffed up your surname, didn't I?
No,
it's pretty good.
Dion, it's all okay.
Yeah, you can't spell mine, so it's all good. You spell it with a Z, not an S.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So we're even.
Well, true, yes. Yeah, but it's an exotic feel about it anyway.
It is. Mate, how you been?
I've been well, Dion, thank you.
Yes. Been on any fishing trips lately?
I have. I went on a trip last year to a place called Swamarez Reef, and it was a fantastic experience. It was definitely one of those experiences where I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thoroughly enjoyed not having internet for a week as well.
Wow. Do you get seasick when you're out there?
I don't, because there's a doctor that comes with us on these trips, and he injects us with anti-motion sickness stuff, and it stops you from getting seasick. So it's pretty good stuff.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not a big boat person. But the motion makes me a bit sick. So, but good on you. And is that like your, I'd say your disconnect?
Definitely is. I'm a person who's constantly on the go, always needing to do something. I'm not a person who sits at the beach and reads a book, but fishing's one of those things that actually allows me to just simmer down.
Sit still until you get the fish.
Until I get the fish.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, given your industry, it's always on the go, and it's quite complex and a lot of thinking and very, very high level of attention to detail, right? So I think the last time I spoke to you, we were talking about your team, and I think you were trying to grow your team last time. So how's that happen? Like, it's probably been a year since you've been on, or close to.
I think it's 18 months actually.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So how's the team going, and who's new in the zoo, or what changes have happened?
Well, it's a good question, Dion. We still got the staples. We've got Mark and I, the original partners who set up the business just over 10 years ago. So we're 10 years young, and we're celebrating 10 years with a 10-year party actually later this month, which is exciting.
Congrats.
But we've got Max and Henry, who are part of our team. They're our senior planners, really good planners, very open-minded, very proactive personnel, and they are really good at their craft. We've also got Tom on the team as well. He's new. He's learning the ropes, but Max and Henry are definitely helping him navigate through the planning schemes and all the nuances of what we do. And then we've just got some other backup staff as well. So we're doing well. We're still up there with some of the highest producing DAs in Brisbane in terms of numbers. We're very proud of that situation, and we're still enjoying what we do. That's the main thing.
I think you were like top 5 or something like that, weren't you?
Both for reconfiguration of lots or subdivisions and MCUs, which is material changer uses.
Yeah, and that's not something to be seen at, because you're not the biggest.
Certainly not.
But I feel like we've got share very similar ethoses. It's like we don't submit things not to get approved. You know what I mean? Like, I don't submit apps to get approved, and certainly you would never waste your time with a DA not to get approved, right? So that's a great, I guess, great feather in your cap for your team to know that you're doing the right thing. The way you guys submit is accurate, and you get the outcome.
We do. We average probably about between 23 and 25 development applications per month. And from our perspective, we rarely get refusals. I can't recall actually the last refusal. I think it'd be at least a year from our last refusal. So that's pretty good kudos for us.
That's pretty good. And that, again, attention to detail. But mate, look, that's a really great segue into why we're here today, right? Like of all the approvals that you did, there are some dudes, and I'm sure we can go for hours about talking about all the weird and wonderful things that, you see, I see, etc. But mate, I want to really run into the top 3 things that developers or people make when they're trying to either purchase the development site or develop the site, etc., and what they're trying to achieve out of it. So I want to talk about 3 things today. Buying, one of the things that what we see a lot is buying the wrong site, not appreciating the importance of due diligence, / paying for advice, which is like not going to be free. A lot of the people that I deal with, I'm sure you deal with, like really underestimate the approval process, complexity and costs. And then, mate, some people just have got grand visions of grandeur and they just don't. I don't know, how does designing the wrong product really affect the market that you're trying to enter and exit? And the costs of that, I guess, is key too. So does that sound like a good plan for the convo?
Yep, I like it. Let's start.
Mate, let's go. So let's get into that first one. I'm sure you've seen it. I know we've talked plenty, but mate, what are you seeing with people buying the wrong? What are some of the pitfalls when you're buying the wrong site and actually not appreciating the advice process?
Yes. So it's a very interesting question, and it's sometimes a challenging way to start off a conversation with a client who doesn't seek advice from the get-go. It's arguably one of the biggest mistakes both newbies in the development space and also some seasoned developers make is not appreciating what they're buying. And I think you've got to emphasise the point that each site's different in Brisbane. Each site has its own individual challenges or constraints, and they always invariably get caught up in the opportunities of the site rather than focusing on the challenges of the site. They don't properly understand what they're buying, and I think it's really important to stress that, but also they don't fully understand or appreciate the planning constraints that go with it. And what I mean by planning constraints are, your flood overlays, your character and heritage overlays that come with that, the minimum lot sizes and frontages and all the things that the planning scheme prescribes. People look at things holistically or the end product and not look at the process. Infrastructure are big issues. You're dealing with sewer, water, electricity, stormwater. They're all big ticket items, and you just need to take those on board. Biodiversity and vegetation issues are also things that need to be considered. Cutting and filling sites and everything like that.
Because it all comes with cost.
It does.
When you think of
It does come
development
with cost.
feasibility, how do you not? Yeah, and I see it.
Yeah.
Feasibilities are like like half a page, 1 page. I'm just buying it for this. I'm going to do it for this, and this is the outcome. It's like, yeah, but what about all the other costs? Because they don't know.
That's right. And you think understanding your site would be the base level sort of question that you ask yourself. What am I buying?
Yeah.
What am I doing here? What is going to be the outcome? How do I start? How do I get to the finish line? And they're the things that we help out with.
But do you reckon that's like a bit to do with getting caught up in the process of, oh my God, there's a site. You walk to the site and then you've got that real estate agent that's literally trying to sell the site to you and going, and the pictures that you get on the realestate.com with the square and the line down the middle saying subdivision potential, subject to council approval. But like, do real estate agents really know whether they can do that or not? Like, I think that's half the problem.
It is half the problem, and you don't know the answer to that question until you actually start speaking to the agent. And it's not hard to work out whether that agent has got an understanding of the site, or whether they're just selling it because they want to sell it. And I'm not going to go in there, but what I will say is, if you're a property developer or you want to get into the property development game, don't listen to agents. Listen to the professionals. Ask the questions that need to be asked, Dion. If you want to ask a question, ask the right person. You don't want to be asking the guy at work about whether you can subdivide a block or not. You need to ask the planner. You need to ask the engineer.
Yeah.
And whether that engineer is a civil engineer, hydraulic engineer, a traffic engineer, or if there's issues associated with vegetation on site, you've got to ask the professionals. And it's amazing how people don't ask the questions that need to be asked. And you sometimes have to prompt these people when they do ask the questions.
Do you reckon it's probably because they don't know who to ask? Or they don't actually have the team? They haven't planned? This is the whole premise on this is you actually haven't planned anything and you're just going to sign checks you can't, or trying to cash checks you can't, or sign checks you can't cash, right?
Yeah.
So I reckon it's a column A, column B.
It could be, but I've had plenty of examples where I've had clients who have been referred to me. We've looked at multiple sites. We've gone through the pros and cons of the site, the opportunities and constraints, and then don't hear from them for a while, and then they call you on a Monday and say, "I've bought this site," and I go, "We've looked at half a dozen sites for you to date, and you've been very good and very diligent. And you've listened to our sort of advice and experience." And then you've just gone and bought a site without even talking to me. It's a really strange situation. It's almost like they don't want to. They're afraid to ask me about this particular site because they don't want to hear the answer.
Yep. Because I get this all the time, right? It's the same thing with what I do, Mark. Like, we've got a classic case, not with me, but with another broker, and clients have just gone and signed a contract, 14-day finance clause, but they've got like commercial security. They need to sell their property. There's a big tax bill. The financials don't stack up. But they did that without actually checking whether you can do it. It's the same thing, but just a different level. And I think that comes down to just not wanting to hear no.
Could be the case.
You can't surround yourself with yes people.
Yes.
That you pay for people to tell you yes or no, right? Like it's, hey, and then you can't help them. But I guess it's a costly mistake.
Well, it can
It's
be.
a really
Yes.
costly mistake. So what would that sort of set them back? Like buying the wrong site, like cost wise. What do you reckon?
Well,
roughly?
I as a planner, I don't sort of get into the mechanics of the costs. All I look at as a planner, or our team looks at, is we look at a site, we identify the constraints and opportunities for that site. And then if we need to get external advice, whether it be engineering, landscape architecture, traffic, or hydraulic, or environmental advice, we go away and we've got our set level of experts who help us in that space, and they're very good with their time. They're very generous with their time. So if we say we've got a client looking at this site, I'll send them a 2-minute spiel and say, look, we're looking at this site. I've got concerns about, say, the flooding, and our hydraulic consultant will go, I've looked at this site before, or I'm familiar with the area. Don't go for it. It's a bad site for this reason. Or, actually, this one's actually got some merit, but we need to investigate further. And once you sort of get that sort of, that flow of positivity associated with the site, then I think it's time to sort of engage on the due diligence front. And getting that sage advice, that unbiased advice, as you mentioned the other day. And it's really important to do that.
Yeah, I think it's the surrounding yourself with the right, like you just said what I was about to say. Like you surround yourself with the right people for your team to get the right advice to give that to the clients. The same, that's a developer or anyone purchasing property needs to surround themselves with the right team, especially if they want to grow a portfolio, develop a site, all that sort of stuff. You need to have the right people in the right space giving you the advice, because even if you get the site, there's a massive, and it's good, right? Like site's great. Nothing's approved for your development. And so then when it comes to the council process, this is another thing that I'm picking up on a lot of. They're like, oh, it's going to cost this much, and I'm like, okay, I'm not a town planner, and I don't really know, but I've speaking to enough people like yourself to go, you haven't budgeted enough, or you don't actually have that right information. And you know, I had a client say, oh, I'm going to get this subdivided and titled in 3 months. I had to laugh. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not like, it's not going to happen. You're dreaming. So go into a little bit of detail, I guess, in some of the areas that people really underestimate in that approval process or in that application process, because even though, let's say, you know, they've bought the site, they've done a little bit of due diligence, and now it's coming to execute. What's the pitfalls? Where do people really underestimate this very key part? Can't stress this enough of the process.
That's right, and I think you've nailed it with the key part, because at the moment when you buy a property, it's just worth what that property's worth. What we do as planners is that we value add, and the way to value add is to get a development approval in place. And I think people underestimate that development application process, and they underestimate it from the perspective of cost and in terms of complexity. And what I mean by those things is that DAs take months. Look, there's straightforward applications we do, and they take weeks, but they're generally house applications or demolition applications or very, very modest applications. So they take weeks, and they're supposed to take that length of time, and they do. But once you start getting into more complex applications, and the more complex the application is, the more it costs, and the more likely it's going to take time to go through that process with council. There are so many different stakeholders involved with applications. You've got planners, you've got engineers, you've got architects, you've got landscape architects, you've got traffic consultants, and that's before we even lodge the application with council. Then you've actually got the application process, and whether we have a pre-lodgement meeting with council first or not, that's part of that journey of due diligence. And the part of the pre-lodgement process is providing clients certainty on particular outcomes. So if we've got a complex site and we want to get some certainty around a couple of issues or a couple of outcomes, we'll engage with a pre-lodgement meeting with council to get that certainty to go to that next level of documentation, because a pre-lodgement meeting is significantly less cost than a full-blown DA. And let me be completely transparent about that. When you've got an application that involves an engineer, a planner, surveyor, then you've got the council fees on top of that. Application fees, inclusive of everything, can vary anywhere between $15,000 to $100,000. And so you want to make sure that when you lodge that DA or that development application, you've got everything in check, because it's really important to get that process right and get all the information right, because time is money. The longer you've got an application in with council, the more it's costing you in holding costs, and it's the longer it takes to get to market. So that's really important to stress, Dion.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is the pre-lodgement meeting is your policy testing, scenario testing, and then sort of like creating the strategy on how you're going to actually lodge that application.
That's a really good way of describing it, because there is a strategy to every planning application that we do. And from that strategy perspective, we need to get involved the professionals or the experts in that space. And I can't stress that enough. The better people I surround myself with is the better outcomes we're going to achieve for our client, especially when we've got a cross-pollination of issues. Engineering and environment don't get on at the best of times in these circumstances. So we've got to strike a balance between those particular issues, especially when we've got challenging sites.
Yep. Any sites that come to mind when you've just recently that you've done a pre-lodgement for, and then it's sort of it's sort of gone, you've gone, okay, done the pre-lodgement, and then all these other things came up after it?
We actually did have one recently, and I won't disclose which local authority it was. It's not important. The important thing was we identified a client came to us at the site. It was a subdivision, and it wasn't actually the correct zoning to do multiple lots, but we identified it was in the urban footprint, and that from a mechanics perspective, we could demonstrate that despite the underlying zoning, we could actually go for a higher yield in this particular situation.
How many, if you don't mind me asking, how many did they potentially take it from?
From one lot, which was what the underlying zoning allowed for, to 9 lots.
Oh, wow.
So it was a good model. We got our multiple disciplines involved, particularly from a civil engineering perspective and an environmental perspective. They were the 2 big ticket items. We canvassed the client in terms of the outcomes that they wanted to achieve. We said we think we can achieve it. We prepared a subdivision plan, prepared a pre-lodgement meeting with council, had that pre-lodgement meeting with council, identified what the issues that we wanted to discuss with them, and the biggest issue was in relation to koala corridors. And in this particular instance, there was a large corridor at the back of the site, which we weren't touching, and we were happy to leave untouched because we believe it was integral to the overall strategy for the koala habitats and the corridor of vegetation that existed through there. We also canvassed council in terms of the lots at the front because there were a couple of significant trees there that needed to be felled to accommodate this particular layout. Council at that particular time were open to those trees being removed. However, when we did lodge the application some months later after we got the advice, council did an about face in terms of that particular situation.
No.
And that's challenging.
Yeah.
The client was at the pre-lodgement meeting, heard all the pre-lodgement advice. We had the pre-lodgement minutes. The client was at the recent meeting with council where we challenged council on this issue about the trees that they wanted to be retained to provide an additional corridor, which if we adopted council's strict advice that they came back with, we would have lost 4 lots out of the 9 lots we were proposing.
That's a big chunk of the development.
It is a big chunk of the development. We sat down with council. We aired our concerns about their representations and in terms of the process that we were adopting, and we're still in the throes of that. But it just goes to show that it's important to basically be transparent with your representations, but also be transparent with how you're processing everything. Because the client, if wasn't privy to those conversations, would have been a little bit upset with us in terms of the context of the situation.
Yeah, it's important, and I guess like that's going part of like understanding what as a client, understanding what you're actually getting and understanding the process and actually being part of the process and not just handing off. Oh well, they'll just do it and just happens, and then when it goes pear-shaped, you can't get the right context or purpose around what's actually happening. But that's a really strong example where it's like, well, they've gone to the planning meeting, they understood the importance of the planning meeting because the way you guys have articulated why we're going there, and I'm sure you would have said, hey, if you could make it, please be there, or if they could be proactive. But how many people do you think just go and do these without even doing that extra bit of, they've got the property, they don't even do a pre-lodgement meeting, or they don't engage the right people to get the advice?
I don't know the numbers, obviously. I do know people do it. I had an example last year where I was presenting at a property forum, and this particular gentleman came up to me after the forum and my presentation and asked me for my opinion on a site. And I looked at it and I said, did you have a pre-lodgement meeting with council on this matter? He goes, no. I said, well, that's the first thing I would have done, is to engage with council about these issues, because this is a heavily constrained site with multiple issues to address. And I'm not surprised, because I then cited the council information request. And I said, I'm not surprised council came back with all these issues, considering the site's context. Advice the person didn't particularly like to hear, but it was advice that I thought was relevant because I want to be completely upfront and honest. In these
Sometimes it's
circumstances.
not what you want to hear; it's what you need to hear. And unfortunately, sometimes no is better than a quick no is better than like a drawn out. Oh yeah, maybe no, I don't know. Like uncertainty. You'd rather have a bit of certainty up front than or know exactly, but be able to make a decision on exactly what you're going to get into, and understand that before spending too much money. Which is the whole premise of do we go to council straight away, or that's the complexity of development where you're going to pay holding costs if you do it wrong. It's that cost.
The cost is big because, and I don't know why people do it, but people buy property on a whim sometimes. It's some of the biggest investments you're going to make in your life, and you want to get a return on them. I understand that. But going back to the council process, but it's not just a council process. You've also got to take into account there's other stakeholders. You've also got to account that there's council. There's also state government sometimes in terms of referral agencies. There's internal stakeholders in council in terms of their internal agencies that they deal with. If it's an advertised application, there's third-party appeal rights from neighbours and the public. So you've got to take that into context. And there's also the political atmosphere at that time. And I think from our perspective, we deal with council every day. We also understand the subtleties of the ebb and flow of council government and government policy, because that does impact on outcomes on applications. So what was not appropriate 10 years ago could be appropriate today for various different factors. And I'll give you an example. A lady got referred to us late last year. She owns a property in Balmoral, 1,000 square metres, perched on top of a hill, double block, had a pre-war house on it. And she came to us and her scope was, I'd like to keep the pre-war house and create a battle axe block at the rear and build another house. And so we went through and did our preliminary investigations as a team. The client came in and saw us. She sat down and gave us the premise to why she wanted to do what she wanted to do. And we said, that's great. We think we can do this. But the question was also posed to her, why don't you consider removing the house that's at the front? And then the story came out that she went to council 10 years ago through another consultancy and applied for the character house to be removed. And we said, and it got refused. And she said, yes, it did. We went to appeal and it got very stressful, so I pulled out of the appeal. And I said to this lady, I said, look, I do know politically 10 years ago, council were hypersensitive about their pre-war housing. A bit's changed in the last decade. I also believe that that particular streetscape had some other houses removed in that particular time. And I said to her, look, I know that it was a very stressful moment for you a decade ago, but I'd like you to consider removing the house again. Here's my reasons why. Number one, if we can remove the house, the subdivision costs will be eradicated.
Battle axe versus straight down the middle.
Down. You'll have better lots. You won't have to do a subdivision because you're existing titles. I feel from my perspective as a company that does a lot of demolition applications, the proposal had merit. I then canvassed one of the industry experts in a heritage architect who concurred with our assessment and the merits of a removal of the house. And I got back to her a day later and said, look, I've canvassed the expert, and from our perspective, we feel that if we lodge the application now, we would have a good chance of successfully removing the house. And she goes, look, if you can get it, I'm happy to take the risk, because that she didn't particularly like the house.
She's doing it because she thought she had to, based on old information.
And she would prefer to build a brand new house, and she had certain requirements as well in terms of that house, and they were compromised if she had to do the battle axe block. Long story short, we lodged the application and it was approved unquestioned by council.
Nice.
And the lady was absolutely rapt with the outcome. She was bordering on tears when she heard the news. And look, that's a great story. And not every story is like that. But it just goes to show that if you surround yourself with the right people and the right consultants and the experts, you can get the right outcome.
Yeah. So in that instance, when you've got that through, right? So now you've given her what she wanted. Do you know what she's designing on that place? Because Balmoral's a pretty high area. You're like, you get a lot of these sort of developments going, or many whatever subdivisions, etc. They've got this canvas stuff, right? And they just don't read the tea leaves, and they just put not appropriate housing or product for the area. So
in this particular instance, she's engaged a really good and experienced building designer.
Nice.
And she is building what I think is an appropriate built form for that particular site. It's a ripper of a site. Great views, great orientation, and I think that the house that will be there will be an excellent example of what people's expectations are.
Yeah.
So she's not underestimating the value of the property, and I think she's putting a really good outcome on that site. But designing the wrong product for the market is something we do witness. And it's not just we witness personally in our own organisation, but we see other developments and go, I think they could have done things better.
Is that really hard for you when you go past a development site going, what the hell?
Yeah. Our office is in Kennedy Terrace in Paddington, and there's this one house that's been there since, I think, the late 90s, early 2000s, and it irks me every time I see it. The dimensions are disproportionate to the house. The roof angles are all wrong. The colour's wrong. Everything's wrong with this particular house.
Maybe they were just going for that look to, maybe if I can irk this one person for the rest of their life, it's my little abstract house.
Look, I don't judge people for what they want to do with their property. It's their property. It's up to them. But a little bit of advice on that particular outcome would have completely changed the complexion of how that house presents to the street.
Because it sticks out like a sore thumb, I bet.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, it doesn't qualify for the pub test. Let's just say.
Oh, so what impact do you think that would have? Like, what's one of the biggest impacts do you think it would have not selecting the right product, or the right product for the market that you're going in?
I think it's very important because you get examples where people's emotions get involved in these particular situations. So they might build a luxury high class home in an area that doesn't command it, or they underbuild in an area that does command a higher level of articulation and detail in terms of those particular houses. But what I find is poor layouts, and whether that's a poor layout in a house design, in units, in townhouses, or lot configurations, ultimately affect resale. People are smart. People are switched on. They know what they're buying these days. If they're spending that amount of money for an end product, they want to be going, I'm buying a product that I like, that's not going to, as I said, irk me. The front of a house is your face of your house, basically. So it presents to the street. It's the thing you drive into, in and out of every day. So you want to have that right. You also want to have your designs right internally. Whether that's a house, a townhouse, a unit, you want it to be right. And I've seen a lot of maturity in the market in the last 10 years, particular. And I'll give you an example. I've got a client, and he's been a client of mine for a decade now, and a long-term friend as well. He is meticulous when he looks at sites in terms of the demographic, what the market wants, what he believes the market would work well in this particular site. And he's done 3 sites in the last 8 years, and I'll quickly run through them. The first example was in about 2018-19, he had purchased a site in Ashgrove. And at the time, he paid a lot of money for this particular site. And it had a DA in place or a development approval in place for 22 units. And I went, okay. And he goes, Mark, I'm dumping this DA. I'm starting again. I don't think it works. I don't think it's the right mix. I don't think it's the right outcome for this particular site. And he redesigned it for 14 units. So he dropped the yield in this particular instance. When the product was finished, he sold 13 of the 14 within about 2 weeks of it going onto market. All of them owner occupiers, pretty much all record sales for the front units, and provided really good designs. And for people who lived in the area but didn't want to move out of the area but couldn't find that product in the area. And as soon as that product came on the market, it sold like hotcakes. So had an approval, 22 units, built 14 instead, and got a better outcome on the site. That was example number one.
More is, or less is more. Yeah, right.
Example two, he found a site, not as good as a site in Ashgrove admittedly, but he found a site in St. Lucia, and I can't exactly remember how many units it was, maybe 17, 18 units it had approval for. He bought the site and he said, I'm dropping that. I'm not even going to bother trying to retweak it. It just doesn't work. This particular outcome, I think, was 8 units.
It's a half, more than half.
Yeah, more than half. Big units, big balconies, all in the same level, 3 car spaces for each unit. Really good design, really good outcome. Sort of mix in a bit of COVID at the same time, which complicated the build and the build cost. But again, got fantastic sales with it and got rid of them relatively quickly in the context of the situation. Then the last example, he identified he bought a site which had a 3 townhouse outcome on it. And he tried to tweak the 3 townhouses on this particular site, but couldn't make it work. And we had a bit of a brainstorming exercise, and I said, why don't you just build two nice houses? And he looked at it, and the mechanics of how that worked at that particular time suited him very well, because the 3 townhouse product, he had to build all of them at the same time and then sell them all at the same time. Whereas with the outcome that he ultimately achieved, he redesigned the outcome in terms of a 2-lot subdivision, got the lots created, built a fantastic product, sold it, and then was able to fund the next project.
It's a bit of cash flow, better cash flow.
Exactly
outcome.
right.
And then he's got sales precedents on the first one to go for the second one.
So again, it was another example where, as you say, less is more, but he understood the market. He catered for the market and built for that market.
Yeah, and I think I was talking to you about the one I'm doing at Lycora Street as well. And something really funny about the carports versus the garage. When you're building a property, the garage is probably about 40, 50 grand of the build cost. So we're building a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. It's not a very big house, but it's nice. Good layout, functional, does the job. But we're not putting a garage in there. So it saved us like 50 grand. So I think we're building it for about 250. We're putting a carport. And the reason we're putting a carport is on that street, no one's got a garage. Like everyone's got a carport. And they don't even have the roller doors on the carport. It's just an open carport. Just drive straight into the driveway, get your groceries out, walk straight into the front door.
And you've got to meet the market.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a pioneer, that's great. But sometimes being a pioneer will cost you money.
Because there's no, and the other thing is what people don't realise is if it's all these houses that are sold with these sort of characteristics, and you're the one property that's got different, or it's built very differently, or it's exclusive, well, there's no sales evidence in the area that you're going to get the value for what you want. Especially like you build a high end house in a not so high end suburb, you're not going to get the high end prices.
Yeah, no,
it's a cost.
All good observations, and I think that just reinforces the point of understanding the market. So,
because you don't really get once you do the development approval and stuff you don't get involved in the building process at all.
Generally not, Dion. Our sole purpose is to value add to the site, and that was the mechanics of what we described at the beginning. You identify a site, you say, can we value add here? Yes, we can. How can we value add, and what's the best way of value adding? And I think that's 2 really important. They're not mutually exclusive issues, but they're intertwined. But it's important to if you're going to do something on that site, do it and do it well.
Yep.
And if you're going to do it well, get the best people to work with you.
Yep. Well, you've just answered the next question I was going to ask you anyway. Like, what are your tips? But you've already given us the tips, which is good. I think, you know, from the takeaways that I've got from this is, don't be a tight ass. Get the right advice. Pay for the advice that you want to achieve, because ultimately, it's going to cost you less at the beginning than it will if you already start the process. Always overestimate your costs as opposed to underestimate your costs, and also realistic timeframes. I think that's, and then obviously design. Make sure the design is fit for purpose, as in like fit the area. Like, just read the tea leaves for God's sake. Like, it's not hard. Anything that I've missed? Like, any other tips that you want to throw in?
Oh, I think it's important to understand the process, and don't listen to agents. You know, this will take you 3 months to get through council. Well, no, it won't. You know, this is only going to cost you 30 grand. No, it won't. It'll cost you significantly more depending on as I said, the constraints and opportunities of the site. The constraints determine how much everything costs. The easier the site, the less it costs, but it's also probably more expensive.
Yeah.
The less expensive the site, the more constraints it has, but it's more at the end of the process, it's going to cost you more. It's striking that balance and going, what is this property worth with all these constraints? And those constraints that I mentioned at the earlier piece, whether it's flooding, biodiversity, character, all those sorts of things you need to take into consideration. Where the infrastructure is. Am I reliant on a neighbour to get access to stormwater or sewer or something like that? They all play their part. And I can't emphasise more that the DA or the development application process, its timeframes is determined by exponentially how many constraints or problems there are with that site. The easier the site, the quicker it's going to get through. The more challenging the site, the longer it gets through. Can you afford to have this thing go longer than it actually is? Can you afford not to get the right advice and understand the process? Don't get advice from your neighbour. Don't get advice from the guy you're having dinner with on a Saturday night. Don't get advice from your agent. Get advice from the people who know what they're talking about.
And it's got to be independent and unbiased, because, and you've got to be comfortable with the word no, because not everything's going to be a yes. Because I don't think you ever give a straight yes. It'll be yes, but we need to do some more. Like, yeah, it's got merit is the words, I think. But mate, thanks for coming on and dropping some knowledge. I think it's been too far between drinks and or podcasts in this case. But mate, how does one get a hold of you? Hopefully you guys are on Instagram now, because I'm pretty sure you weren't last time.
You know what? We are on Instagram.
Hey.
We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We actually apologies. We recently updated our website, and we've got a ton of examples of the products that we've achieved and the outcomes we achieved for clients, and there's some really good examples there.
What's the website?
The website is www.urbicus, that's urbicus.com.au. 3367 1582. That's our phone number.
And what's the Instagram?
Urbicus.com.au.
Is it? That's right. So, I'll ask Henry.
Henry,
he probably knows.
Henry and Max are running the social media platforms in our organisation.
Good.
And they're doing a very admirable job.
Good.
And,
well, you're further along than last time with the the social media side.
It's funny because we had the Urbicus Instagram site platform created, and the first thing is this podcast.
Oh, is it? Yeah,
Yes.
awesome.
So,
awesome.
yes.
No, we'll do the same for this one. But mate, congratulations on 10 years.
Thank you.
It is a massive achievement. And just for everyone, as you know, if you need Mark's help, you've got their website, etc. If you don't want to speak to Mark directly, come and speak to me. I'll just refer you to Mark. But just the advice on this, or the information on this podcast is very general in nature, doesn't take into consideration your personal circumstances or your site. If you want your personal circumstances in relation to your finances checked, come and see me at Dion Finance Specialist or Dion Fernandez at LinkedIn. But if you want to talk sites and whether the site's right for you, do not sign a contract till you A, speak to someone that knows your finance, and B, speak to someone that understands the site and what you're trying to achieve. That's Mark. But until the next episode, thanks for listening.
Thanks, Dion.